speak I've been approached by some residents. I wanted to speak to the possibility of having staff look into creating a lawn or uncut grasses bylaw for Tantramar. Doing a fair amount of research before bringing this forward, I believe it'll better our community by addressing gaps in Section 13 of the Local Governance Act. Obviously in Tantramar we're lucky to live in a beautiful natural environment, and our population has embraced those natural surroundings. That said, as a council, we must ensure we protect all the interests of our community by mitigating potential safety risk that a completely unkept property may create. To clarify, the intention of this proposed bylaw would be to establish some guidelines in support of the LGA Section 13 dangerous or unsightly properties, specifically concerning residential zone properties within Tantramar, not farmers' fields or woodlands and fields without housing on the outskirts of our communities. I know that's where people jump to first. Also, for clarification, I am not necessarily convinced that a length measurement of grasses on residential lawns is a necessary component of this bylaw either. I feel discretion is critical in this area of the bylaw, and I'm sure staff will determine how to quantify unkept when or if they are in research stage for us. What I heard, the areas of concern that I heard from residents, text is a little small, sorry for that, were things around, everybody resonated around the same things: fire safety, accumulation of dead grass from previous year's growth right at the base of the dwelling or structure provide a real threat to our fire department members and residents if a fire occurs on a property with these conditions. The fire can spread quickly to neighboring properties or structures through this dead undergrowth. Grass fires which occur in unmowed conditions are extremely difficult and stubborn to extinguish completely. Habitat for rodents and other wildlife. Leaving long grass on a property right up to the base of a dwelling or structure encourages wildlife to take up and maintain long-term residence there. Depending on the type of wildlife, this can lead to either unsanitary or unsafe conditions in our community. The other thing I heard a lot was unkept lawns and their effect on property values. There's a lot of talk lately about property values and property taxes in our community. Properties with unkept or neglected lawns and gardens influence appraisers or potential buyers and subsequently lower neighboring property values. Didn't research that fact, but that's what I heard. As I started to, that's on now. As I started to research a little bit, my first thought was, why do we need a bylaw for unkept lawns? Regardless, we have dangerous and unsightly premises, and I feel that that was what was captured or thought of back in 2018 when this was in front of Sackville Council. Upon researching, the LGA has some holes in it, and that's why you'll see further on why some other communities have decided to add some protections with the bylaw. In dangerous or unsightly, I'll say that it's not dangerous and unsightly, it's dangerous or, so you have one or the other. The dangerous part is covered in 131.2 in the article. Dangerous is defined as no person shall permit a building or other structure owned or occupied by the person to become a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of being vacant or unoccupied. That's talking about a building or a structure. Same thing, 131.3. No person shall permit a building or other structure owned or occupied by the person to become a hazard to the safety of the public by reason of dilapidation or unsoundness of structural strength. So nothing in there about grass or long grass. The second piece of it, the unsightly, is defined in Article 131.1. No person shall permit premises owned or occupied by the person to be unsightly by permitting to remain on any part of the premises. It's very specific. A, any ashes, junk, rubbish, or refuse. B, an accumulation of wood shavings, paper, sawdust, or other residue of production or construction. C, a derelict vehicle, equipment, or machinery, or the body of any part of a vehicle, equipment, or machinery. Or D, a dilapidated building. No mention of long grass, bushes, alders, weeds, noxious plants, etc. That is why I feel many communities, including some of our neighboring communities, have instituted bylaws on this topic with the purpose of filling in the gaps in the LGA by instituting a supporting bylaw in the best interest of all residents. So around us, we have the communities of Moncton, has had something in place since 2018. Dieppe has had something since 2022. It was amended in 2024. Riverview since 2019, amended in 2021, and then Shediac in 2019. So while researching all these bylaws that these communities around us have in place, they have some differences. Both Dieppe and Riverview have made amendments to theirs, as I said. Common among them all, though, is that the call for public safety. Recognize the impacts that unkept vegetative growth can have on public safety in our communities. I also discovered that there has been some recent instances nationally where bylaws of this nature have faced criticism for setting a specific height or length requirement of lawns. I think this in itself is subjective, and an actual length may or may not be required. The most important factor would be to have some language in place that helps bylaw enforcement to quantify when unkept vegetation is determined to be dangerous for our residents, their properties, or our first responders. Past history, I thought I'd include this, just under the former town of Sackville. There was a span of time in 2018 where it was brought to council of the day. August 7th, I believe, is the first entry there. 2018, at a special meeting, it was raised and discussed. 19th of August, at the time, Mayor Hyam did an article with CBC. It was raised in a special meeting at council October 1st, 2018. And then again on the 9th of October 2018, the motion was defeated. That said, given we are now the new municipality of Tantramar and upwards of 6 years have passed since meaningful council discussions on the topic, I felt it deserved another look and possible consideration. Important points I would feel should be considered if we were to direct staff back to look at this bylaw creation would be the intention. Sorry for the text size here, folks. Intention would be to develop a bylaw which defines unkept lawns and grasses as potentially dangerous or unsightly in certain circumstances as a supplement to the language in the LGA, ensuring residents' concerns are met. Criteria could include long grasses up against structures or property lines, fences with no fire break. Focus would be on residential zoned lands within Tantramar, as I mentioned previously, not on the farmers' fields in outlying areas. Language to support removal or noxious invasive plants could be included. Language to include the ability for council to institute a pause on the bylaw to allow for initiatives such as no mow may or others. Language should be similar to existing bylaws in neighboring communities to achieve consistency in the region. Discretion for enforcement is critical. Natural gardens are a must for our ecosystem and are encouraged. The intention to mitigate properties which are completely unkept and therefore present safety concerns. If questions, council has any other questions or clarifying comments, please go ahead. Thank you.
I'll make a quick comment. Well done. That was great. When this came before the former town of Sackville before, a lot of this information was not included. Although the circumstances of what we were looking at was different then, but well done. Very well done. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Butcher? And as evidenced by Councillor Estabrooks, you may not have to talk quite as loud this time.
Right, yes. So thank you, Councillor Estabrooks. You'll need to work on that font size, but at least you did read it out, so there's that. But I came into this remembering 2018 and our decision then and thinking that I really didn't have a change in my opinion, but you've brought very interesting points, and you've really clarified a few things, and I find myself thinking that this is something that we should be looking at. So thank you very much for that presentation, because it was insightful enough to make me reassess my thoughts. So thanks.
Okay. So we had a mover and a seconder. So call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So we had 8F, That is Veolia contract renewal. And just before we get into discussion quickly, the original motion, when it comes to it, it should be on page 23 of the package. So we'll need to make that motion if I'm correct in that, Ms. Beal, yes? Okay. So comments, questions? Councilor Wiggins-Caldwell.
I have a few questions. The first one is, how has the use of Veolia reduced our operating expenses so far? Have you got?
To my knowledge, it hasn't reduced our operating expenses. When we switched to Veolia, there was a water quality issue was the main thing. And it did cost us more, but we also did not have the certified operators that were required in order to operate the plant in accordance with the provincial regulations that we were undertaking. Veolia, being a international company, had the qualified operators to be able to provide that service. So we do pay them. There's, as indicated earlier with the resolution, they are responsible for providing us with regular maintenance and operating guidelines, fill out the reports, and as such, and through Mr. Epple's department, moving forward, he will have to hold them accountable for life cycle planning as need be.
Thank you. Yes. And how much more are we paying for these services than we did when we had it in-housed, as it was run in-house? Do you have a figure there? Or?
Compared to in-house, I wouldn't have that figure right at my fingertips. But one thing when it was operated in-house, we were not meeting the guidelines because we needed a level 2 and a level 3 treatment operator in order to run the Sackville plant. And we did not have those on staff, nor would it have been easy to hire those. So that is a very difficult question to quantify.
Thank you. And regarding charges for out-of-scope projects, overtime and after hours, call-ins, I see we have a budget of 20,000 additional, which seems a low given the aging infrastructure. Was that based on a budget? What was that budget based on?
The 20,000 is based on the experience from 2023, and it is a forecast number for 2025. Obviously, as time goes on and the plant's age, there is the possibility that it will be more. But for out-of-scope projects, what will happen is that we will receive a proposal from Veolia for the work in advance of doing the work so that we understand the scope and the cost of it before they proceed. In 2023, you may recall, Council, that we replaced the green sand in the filters for the Sackville water treatment plant, 2 filter systems, and that was what that cost was. So that involved a great deal of labor and is an unusual occurrence, and so we thought that that was a good place to start for forecasting into the future.
And how has service levels been? Like when the call was, emergency calls in, how is the response time?
The way Veolia works is that they have an on-call person who is on 24/7, 365 days of the year, monitoring the system. And so there's not an issue there. If we need someone on site, they're there within an hour at most, sometimes less. They actually have one employee who lives in Sackville, so not actually a water treatment operator, but a maintenance person, an electrician, I believe he is by trade. And he does some work on the system obviously as well. But I mean, if we need access into the buildings, he can give that to us immediately. We have found that when we make a phone call or we're experiencing an issue with the system and the distribution, that we're able to call the Veolia on-call person and they answer right away and are able to provide us with the information that we're looking for and work with us to resolve any issues that we're encountering.
Just have a couple more. Thank you. And I'm hearing reports of changes in the water since Veolia has taken over in our Dorchester area, such as an increased smell in chlorine in our drinking water, along with staining and sediments in plumbing fixtures. Has any of this been brought to your attention? It has been to mine, but I've just wondered if any, you've heard any complaints.
I have heard one or two from residents and from yourself, Councillor, last week. To my knowledge, the chlorine residuals that we have in Dorchester today are comparable to what we had 2, 3, 4 years ago, but I can go back and check those. The concerns that we've had about staining of fixtures, we believe may have been corrosion that was happening in water tanks, in a hot water tank. But again, it's difficult to quantify. Dorchester does have quite high manganese, and if something goes astray with the filter system, which can happen, then it's feasible that you would get discolored water. Also, when we're flushing, it's not unusual for sediment that's attached to the walls of the pipe to come loose. And if people are drawing water while we're flushing, it's feasible that they might draw some of that discolored water into their plumbing system.
Okay, thank you. Just one more. And I do stand by this. It's why do we not have a backup plan? That's always been a big concern of mine for use to train in-house employees. When we have employees that only require maybe a few more, bit more training to be up into the levels that is required, just for safety backup.
Sorry, I was just checking, I didn't see it pop up. My apologies. That was an operator error on this end. So we do have one employee who I believe is level 2 water treatment trained. In order to have another employee achieve level 2 or level 3 water treatment, it would take a minimum of 3 years. They have to work they have to work in water treatment. So that means they would have to be based in the water treatment plants, working under a water treatment operator, and we just don't have the ability to offer them that experience and have Veolia on site.
Okay. So there is a motion, as I said, I'm pretty sure I have that right, it's on page 23. So if a councillor could read that motion. Councillor Butcher, go ahead. You have the mic anyway, so
I
that
do,
works out.
right. I propose that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the amendment and renewal agreement to the operations and maintenance agreement for the water treatment facilities with Veolia Water Canada Incorporated with an effective date of October 1st, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Councillor Hicks. Call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay from Councillor Wiggins-Caldwell. Motion passed. Okay, number 9, Mayor and Councillor statements and inquiries. Councillor Wiggins-Caldwell.
Thank you, Mayor Black. I just have one with winter approaching quickly. I was just wondering what the update on the rink is in Dorchester and the building for the Zamboni it's to be housed in. I've never heard no more information on this.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, just today, we got permission from the provincial government to build the Zamboni building. So the contractor, Oliver Earl, has been made aware of that, and he's starting to gather the permits required from the Southeast Regional Service Commission. So the work should be starting there soon.
I have a couple things to say, but I'm just waiting to see if anyone else has anything. I just quickly wanted to say, I guess, a shout out to the levy on the lake, which happened in between our council meetings. From what I understand, they had a very successful event again this year. Some of their tents and events were sold to capacity. So congratulations to them. I was looking for some specific numbers, but they're still trying to compile all that data from the event. But I was told that it was an incredible event again this year. I also reached out to Sappy Fest, and they've had the best year since the pandemic. So they had an event at the chapel, which was sold out to capacity, an event at the Legion, which was sold out to capacity. They're trying to get all their numbers in order to see how well the event went this year, and some outreach to the community for economic impact. But again, congratulations to Sappy Fest and Levy on the Lake for two great events. One last thing I wanted to mention. MLA Mitten and myself were supposed to have a call with Minister Ames and Deputy Minister Rob Taylor from DTI, as well as the local engineer about the Wheaton Covered Bridge today. This had been planned for 2 weeks for a virtual meeting this morning. About 45 minutes before we were supposed to have that meeting, they canceled it. MLA Mitten complained before I had a chance to. And the response from the minister's office was that there was no need for the call because there was no update at this time for what was going to happen with the Wheaton Covered Bridge. Disregarding the fact that local farmers are struggling to get equipment and out to the fields and to be able to even harvest some of the fields that are out there. And it may happen that they won't even have that opportunity before the season is out. We did request that we have that meeting anyway. We were denied. So it's really just an update. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew this. It seems to me that often when we reach out to the public and we start getting, some press or some social media around these topics, the minister's office quickly jumps because they want to try to deal with that and curb it. So I want the public to know that this was supposed to happen today, and unfortunately it didn't. So I'll leave it at that. I was very frustrated today by that news. Councillor Butcher.
This is probably premature, but you mentioning that, and earlier today we had Meredith Fisher suggesting that we should put some thought into a heritage, built heritage strategic plan or bylaw or something. I know that bridges are the purview of the province. I'm wondering if Sackville or if Tantramar had some kind of a bylaw around built heritage, we still would have no ability, right? Because they own that. So we're at their mercy.
Exactly.
Correct?
Yep. They still would own it. They would still have right over what to do with that particular bridge, as all the bridges in the province. It has been noted the historical significance of that bridge, not just the functional importance. Not only that, but Tantramar Heritage Trust wrote a letter as well to the Minister's Department in support of getting that bridge reopened and the historical and economic agricultural dynamic of that bridge. So there is a recognition. There used to be many covered bridges in the province. They've just been falling into disrepair, which is detrimental to the historical landscape of the communities across the province. This is one of the longer ones in the province, so that has been maybe not recognized exactly from the Minister's Department, but it has been talked about on our end. All right. Oh, Councillor Tower.
Just on that same note of the bridges, one of the problems, of course, is that the minister feels that it is only a small inconvenience for the farmers. So hopefully more will happen election time now.
Well, that, I mean, it would be great, that would be an amazing election event to come and fix the bridge. I mean, imagine how that would make you look. I guess maybe it's important to point out that the reality is that DTI infrastructure is underfunded provincially anyway, and bridges even more so. So, you know, Megan and I have had conversations about where does this particular bridge fall within the list of things that DTI needs to deal with and approach. So that information we're still trying to get as well. Anyway, I wanted to give that information so that the public would know. But thank you. Moving on to number 10, notice of motion and resolution. We have two from Councillor Josh Gauguin.
Thank you, Mayor Black. So the first one is just a notice of motion in regards to have council use some of their budget line item for a multi-day event in regard to housing initiatives in Tantramar.
Okay, and second?
The second one would be in regards to the heritage presentation that we had this afternoon or this evening. I still need to gather a bit more details on what exactly the ask is, but there'll be something coming up next council.
Okay. Thank you very much. Last on the agenda, adjournment. Moved by Councillor Tower, seconder Councillor Gauguin. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, everyone.